New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you over here.
Rev Brz right here.
And Dr. Tim up here.
And this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. Happens every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We're so grateful that you are with us. And we're so incredibly grateful that we have a returning guest. I think you've been with us before, Dr. Tim. Reverend Dr. Tim Stewart, who is Divine Science Minister and happens to be the president of the International New Thought Alliance. So we're really grateful you're here. And Dr. Tim, as we've said, we're not big on those formal 45 paragraph, 15-minute introductions. We'd rather just give you a moment to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you might be excited to be here today.
Well, I'm always excited to spend time with people like you, even if it is online and Reverend Z. And I'm always excited to talk about what New Thought is and what our potentials are. So that's it. You've already stated Divine Science. I came from that, also a 17-year background in religious science. So and then president for 6 years of Divine Science, and now president of INTA. So that's about it.
It sounds like you stay awfully busy.
My wife thinks so.
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, we're grateful you're with us, and we've got a great conversation ahead for you folks. So hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Let people know what we're doing. Let people know what you're watching. Feel free to chime along and chat along in the comment box as we go. And you never know, you might ask a great question that we want to ask Dr. Tim. But we like to get started around here. And I think like the biggest question we always have for people is this word spirituality gets thrown around in a lot of ways, in a lot of places. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of different definitions out there for it. So we'd like to start there and hear your definition, your interpretation. What is this? What is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual? How do we know we're having a spiritual experience or not?
Well, first, let me say that for me, spirituality begins with something that I call an awakening. It's an awakening to a truth about who we are. Sometimes, and especially we've been in things that they talk about, what do you want? And I say, wake up first to who you are. And when we become aware of that and find that connection, and to me, spirituality is all about connection. We talk about connection to the divine, but it also means connection with each other. So I believe as a person begins a spiritual journey, they not only see the divine in themselves, but they see it in everyone else. If you're only seeing something special within yourself, then it becomes this self-centeredness that, well, almost conceit. But when we find that in everyone around us, I believe it was Thomas Troward, who wrote one time about, he referred to it as an ancient mystery temple, Egyptian mystery temple, but it was sort of based similar to what people who are familiar with the Old Testament would talk about the Jewish temple, and that there was an outer court, and most anyone in the religion could come into the outer court. And then there was an inner portion, and then the very center of it, which was in the Jewish religion, the Holy of Holies. but it was only a place where the high priest, or in the case that he was talking of, those who were truly enlightened could go there. And there you were supposed to be able to see God. You could only go in there if you could see God. Two things that there were plenty of were cats that were feral cats that anyone has ever been around. When there are a lot of cats feral outside at night, and there were wild onions that would get pulled up just by the tons on the sides of the road and cause an odor. Two things people didn't like. And it was said that when you got into the inner Holy of Holies, they had the likeness of the cat and the onions, so that you had to see the divine even in that which seemed repulsive before. So when we do that, then we know we're reaching that spiritual point, when we find it in everyone and everything. Something that brings us closer together, gives us more empathy. It'll develop peace. Religion often, and I can't talk about spirituality with saying there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Yeah. Religion often divides and says it's us versus them. There's someone who's other. And when we truly get into spirituality, we leave that otherness behind, and we begin to see that the oneness not only is just one with God, but it's one with each other as well. And
yeah, I love that, because it speaks to, when you say this awakening, that awakening, as I see it, is an awakening to the spirit that is in all of us, right? And once we can awaken to that part of that we call religion becomes very clear. It's just a set of practices or rituals for an individual person to awaken or to connect more with the spirit that's already there. And then you begin to realize that I don't need to convert anybody, to you, yours, to me, mine, because, there's a difference between a daffodil and a rose. And so when we talk about spirituality, it encompasses all of the different individual ways a person might enhance their spirituality or awaken their spirituality, but the spirituality is the key.
And that leads us directly into the second question that we like to explore is how do we know when something being labeled spiritual, how can we make sure that it's inclusive of other belief systems, of people from different backgrounds? You spoke to religion and how religion likes to make the us and them, make someone the other. I see that sometimes spirituality can do that as well. And so from your perspective, what are some of the ways that we can ensure a spiritual organization or a spiritual community is more inclusive of everyone? Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, first, by its definition, from my definition of it, all right, it's an awakening that you begin to see that connection with other. All right, what before, when I say others, not just other, that you have before thought is something separate, that wall goes down. But then to be more inclusive means taking that awareness and really paying attention to it. Sometimes people are aware of it and they know it, but are they paying attention to it? And we can become more inclusive, or we can make sure that we include everyone by understanding that, first of all, we have our beliefs, and our beliefs will lead us into certain practices, but it also gives us certain things that are values. All right. And the practices, some of those are about self-development, and some of them about how are the way that we want to live and present in the world. And that portion of it goes into that values as well. And when we value others, we begin to pay attention. So, I recently saw a post, and someone, it had to do with, in Tennessee, they're big about trying to pass banned books and drag shows. Okay, never mind the crime rate or anything else. Just if we can get rid of those, right? And someone mentioned how it affected them, and so many others. It doesn't affect them; they don't realize it. So we have to have that added empathy we begin to think from a point not only of how does it affect me, how does it affect the world? How does it affect someone else? How do we respect that? So to me, the way we become more inclusive is to be aware and to increase that empathy. And again, it's I don't want to get off on too much of my other issues there with it, but it's awareness, it's paying attention, it's having empathy, and it's beginning to honor those things. Even if they may not be what I do, we honor those.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. I said I would share something earlier. So before anyone else does, we were talking prior to coming on the air, and we mentioned Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins at Sunshine Cathedral down in Florida. We'll be mentioning him again later.
Right.
But his church, he's in an area that there are a lot of Hispanics. His focus, while everyone is welcome there, everyone is, you'll feel at home there, I always have, but primarily he focuses on the LGBTQ community. And being in South Florida, there are a lot of Hispanic people in his congregation, and they came from Catholic backgrounds. Well, people have things they're familiar with, and to them, that is linked. Psychologically, they're linked to something that makes them feel more connected when they experience that. So there are these little things sticking out from the wall that have a cutout for a bowl in them, and he'll take a little bowl of water and he will bless it and put it there. And for those who came from that Catholic background, there's holy water for them if they want it. But his message and what you're going to hear from the pulpit is a new thought message. What you're going to find in practices are new thought, but yet it's about saying, okay, if that allows you to feel more at home and allows you to feel more welcome, we're going to be inclusive and we're going to allow you that. So it's a wonderful model. And as I said, everyone feels at home there.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Z, but I don't know that I've ever seen a blessing bowl in a New Thought community. It's definitely a way of bridging those gaps.
Yes. And I love it because when we think about New Thought, in my mind, it's about how do we generate some new ideas? How do we look at what's already here, if you will, in a new way with this spirituality as the base that shows it's all connected. And so when we can move into that kind of space, all things are possible.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep this going then. So, Dr. Tim, what would you recommend for somebody that, let's say, came to you and said, I really want to deepen my connection, my spiritual connection to the divine? What would be your recommendations for someone that's maybe just getting started or just kind of learning all about this stuff called New Thought?
Well, first, is to have an awareness, to begin to realize that their connection is already there. It's a matter of them becoming more aware of it. And that's in spiritual practices. Number one, I came from a traditional background. And when I was a minister in a very strict fundamentalist type church. And people would say, well, the minister that doesn't pray this much every day is not worth their listening to. Well, the fact is, our spiritual practices emanate from us as well. So if you want to have that connection that's so real and literally is part of your life and part of who you are, I always say have a meditation practice. I've studied different things, and I said one of my teachers was so much into meditation they didn't have anything that we might call treatment in the religious science circle, or a New Thought treatment, type thing, or prayer treatment. And I've seen others that were so into prayer treatment they didn't take time for meditation. So it's a balance. And I would tell someone, develop a spiritual practice, make it a priority. I wouldn't leave the house in the morning without putting on my shirt. So have that spiritual practice, something that you plan your day and you give your time to it. reading, and again, find a place that you feel spiritually at home. You know, it's not going to say that I'm divine science. Divine science might not be for you, but you might find it in Unity. You might find it at UFBL. You might find it at the Center for Spiritual Living, because each one, while they have the same truths underneath, they have their own type of culture. And what works best for you is the best one for you. It's not what I prefer. It's what you prefer. So I tell them, begin to look around and form those relationships and get a spiritual practice.
Right on. Cool.
Yeah. And I love that, because that kind of highlights the idea that there's no competition in God.
That's right. And I tell people, you know, sometimes churches, we hate to admit it, but let's be real. Sometimes you'll hear them talk and they get a little concerned because another church in the neighborhood some of their members are going back and forth. And we need to remind them everything is by right of consciousness. Everything is. That's kind of some jargon that's new. You know, New Thought people will know more what I'm saying if someone's listening that's not familiar with New Thought. But basically, if everything's by right of consciousness, no one is going to steal or take away something that's supposed to be there that way. When Jesus said, "What the Father's given in my hand, no man can pluck it out, no man can take it." What's mine by right of consciousness, and what's there by right of consciousness of the leadership and of the people, they're going to be there. So it's time to open up and realize there's no competition. It's simply about love, and it's about being, and it's about walking this thing that we teach.
Beautiful. All right. Well, one of the other questions we love to dive into, because I think it confuses a lot of people, especially when they're looking at New Thought maybe for the first time, or they've gotten involved, and then up comes the topic of spiritual bypass. Help our audience understand, from your perspective, what is spiritual bypass? How do we know when it's happening? And what can we do to counteract or to move away from the spiritual bypass, the practice of using spiritual bypass?
Well, you said, what is it? And it's a term that, while it originally was coined, I think, all the way back around the 1980s, there are still people today who aren't familiar with it. And it's when someone begins to use their spirituality, kind of like a mask or something that hides the fact that they're not really dealing with an issue or a pain or a hurt, or they're not expressing that they feel. One example of this is sometimes when people, something happens and they say, "Oh, well, there's a lesson in that," or it's all for the good, it's all for the better. Right. That may be true, but there are feelings that are there, and there are emotions. Last week, we had a school shooting here in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. 3 small children died. 3 people who were employees of the private school lost their lives, and of course, the shooter also was killed by the police. And when that happened, I'll admit I was angry. And I had some communication with a friend of mine who happens also to be a minister. And I said, when I'm honest, it makes me angry. And, pardon my little rant here, but I can still do it. We live in a state, Tennessee has the 9th highest crime rate in the country, the 4th highest violent crime rate. We are in the bottom half for education from K through 12, and we're 47th for healthcare. And we have a state legislature that all they want to do is ban books and drag shows. Okay. So all right. So, but I'm able to admit that. I'm able to vent about that. And I can take a deep breath and I can get calm. But the thing is, when we try to hide our spirituality and claim that those feelings aren't there, then we're in that spiritual bypass. We're trying to use it as a front. Sometimes it's not an issue like that. Sometimes it's a hurt.
Right.
And one of the things that I have noticed in New Thought, though, is occasionally I'll find someone and their form of spiritual bypass is if someone has a dislike or an emotional showing towards something that's going on, it's like, well, what's in your consciousness for that? But then if they have that type reaction, then it's like, what's in your consciousness that made you do that to me? It's always what someone else is doing. And one of the big things, we have to begin to look at ourselves, take inventory, and take responsibility. The greatest freedom anyone can ever have is that total responsibility. So the first thing is really, and I tell people, really look, watch, find out what that is that bubbles up at that time when you're not expecting it. And I feel like I'm doing so much more talking, but I guess being the guest, maybe I'm allowed to do that. But in 2011, let me finish this real quick. 2011, my mother was murdered. I don't share that a lot of times because people want to this and that. And it's like, I've got to a point that I go forward with it. It's something that will always have an effect in my life. But very early on in that, I found that I would get in the shower in the morning. And when I was taking a shower, I would be thinking about this and I would begin sort of mumbling. Maybe everyone doesn't do that, but yes, I have these conversations with myself, and I just tell people I'm having my own little board meeting. Don't interrupt. But I found that I was talking to myself because I was working through those emotions, and I realized I had to work through them. I couldn't just, say, okay, I'm going to go in here and meditate for a little while and they're going to be gone. It was a serious thing that had happened. And I realized it when I was, teaching a class and someone they expressed that, it was this horrible thing because their spouse wouldn't eat right. Well, I had to listen and I had to, understand they're really feeling that. I'm not going to do spiritual bypass on them by not honoring and recognizing their feeling. But at the same time, I had that underlying feeling like if that's the only thing you have to be angry about, you don't have nearly as much. Wait till something like this happens. So it's a process of working through it. And we've got to turn that attention back to ourselves. So Reverend Z, I'm going to turn the attention back over to you because you started to say something and I said, let me finish that. So.
Yeah, no. And I think, my internet is being very spotty here today, but when we originally started about, a practice, right? And so what you just spoke to is one of the practices is journaling, right? Is a way of and you do it in your boardroom setting, right? But a way to get those thoughts out, to get those feelings out, and kind of help you stay away from that bypass. Because I can, if I'm honest when I'm doing my journaling, I can look right at it and it's staring me in the face and I can't run. And so that's a practice that I recommend. If it's one sentence or 3 pages, to try to do something every day and writing something down.
Yeah, good.
Great practice.
And I'm reminded as this conversation evolves that this isn't exclusive to New Thought communities and folks that follow the New Thought way of life. I think the first place I ever heard, oh, well, they're in a better place now. Came right out of someone that was a diehard Christian. And these thoughts have been there, but this is part of what I love about New Thought is New Thought's willing to talk about it for the most part. Right. For the most part. There are some people that are still using spiritual bypass, and we can still see that in people. But for the most part, New Thought leaders and those following a New Thought philosophy are willing to have these types of conversations that say, you know what, that really hurts. And it doesn't do anybody good to just pretend it doesn't, because I don't get anything out of pretending it doesn't. It's still going to hurt, but now I'm going to feel ashamed because I feel I can't tell my friends, or I've got no one to talk to about this and nobody wants to listen. And you gave us the greatest example, Dr. Tim, earlier. What's in your consciousness? I refer to that as the ultimate in metaphysical malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
I hear anybody asking that question, it's like, no, that's looking in the wrong direction. Because what people, I believe, are looking for is they're looking for purpose in life. They're looking for meaning in life. And they come to spiritual leaders or communities when they don't find that. When they have a tough time, it's tough. How do you make meaning out of this latest school shooting? And there are all the different intersections. The trans question, the fact that it was a religious school, the fact that this student had some history with the school, but nobody can directly point because the shooter's no longer with us. We don't have any idea what the real motive was there. Those platitudes that just push everything down the road don't actually create healing. Until we talk about it, nobody's getting better, as it were.
That's right. Nobody gets better if we don't talk about it. And going back to that question of what's in your consciousness that people ask, see, that's very much a backward facing question.
Yeah.
It looks backwards. It doesn't look forward. And again, I could talk too long on this, but when we look at like the issue of the school shootings, it's time to do something now, because they'll look toward what just happened sometimes. And it used to be a cry. I don't hear it so much, that they'll say, oh, it's too soon. It's too soon. Right afterwards, you remember hearing that.
Yep.
And I say, well, it's too late for the children in Nashville and those people that died at the school. It's too late for the children at Uvalde. It's too late for Sandy Hook. It's too late. And I could go on and name so many. So it is about letting the past motivate us to new action, but we focus on what we want. Where do we want to go? Rather than totally living there. We have to heal the past, but we heal it. We don't continue to dwell in that, or we begin to get into a thing called blame and shame, and we have to get away from those things, you see. We have this other thing. To me, it's a form of spiritual bypass when people just are always sending their thoughts and prayers, because thoughts and prayers are great. But I remind them, because remember, I have that background. I'll quote a little Bible to them. I'll say, thoughts and prayers are great, but faith without works is dead.
Yes.
So it's time to go to work, something to make it better. And that means, yeah.
And that's the topic of our second segment, folks. So we're going to take a real quick break here. If you wonder what you've stumbled into, this is New Thought Today with my co-host, Reverend Elzia, and our special guest here today, Reverend Dr. Tim Stewart, president of the International New Thought Alliance. We're going to take a quick break, let everybody grab a sip of water and a quick stretch, but we don't want to go anywhere. We don't want you to go anywhere. Stay with us. We'll be back with more of New Thought Today in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Today, I want to remind you to watch out for your yes. The fact of the matter is, the infinite creative power in the universe, the law, always says yes. Regardless of what the circumstance is, it always says yes. So when you say, I am prosperous, I am loving and loved, the answer is yes. And when you say something is a pain in the neck, or when you say you're sick and tired of something, the answer is yes. So choose carefully and be ready for your yes.
And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Rev Robert Brzezinski, my dear co-host Reverend Elzia Sekou, and our special guest today. I'm so grateful you're with us, Reverend Dr. Tim Stewart, the president of the International New Thought Alliance. Now, if you were with us in the first segment, we're talking a lot about helping ourselves to make sure we're all on the same page, help knowing what spiritual bypass is and what spirituality is. And now in our next segment, what we love to do is take a look at, well, where's this all going? So Dr. Tim, when you think about it, what new directions do you see the New Thought movement taking in the future? We come from a history of what many would call mind healing. And many would also say that we're pretty close to focusing as a prosperity gospel. And we believe there's a new vision emerging for New Thought. We'd love to hear more of what you see as the future for New Thought movement.
Well, I definitely believe there's a new future. I believe there's a new way of being, is the way I like to say it, and that I believe New Thought will become more inclusive. One of the things that it hasn't been that many years ago that when someone was talking about starting a church, they would look at the demographics and they wanted to be in the wealthiest part of town. That's true for some I know around this area. And it was almost as if you're not already demonstrating prosperity, we don't want to talk to you about how to do it. And I'm like, let's have something that spreads out and sees a greater diversity of people. I believe we're seeing greater collaboration with the different branches of New Thought than we've ever seen. I've seen times that when a minister in one organization was speaking at a convention or a conference for another organization, they didn't even let it in their hometown now. They didn't allow it to be announced in their home church because it wasn't their organization having the meeting. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're seeing something that opens us up, and as we become more accepting, we attract that's like us. So when we begin to become more open and more accepting, and I think broader in what we will accept, less of the what we were just talking about in the previous segment, what's in your consciousness. And one of the big things, I touched on it a little bit before, having this differentiation between blame and responsibility. All right. When we teach people the freedom that comes from being responsible, that's the greatest freedom there is, because then if you're responsible for it, you can make change. If you're not, you can't change something that you're not responsible for. So accepting that responsibility. And I think as we begin to focus on different things in the way we teach it, we begin to be more inclusive. We begin to be more diverse. And by that, even, I won't go so much into examples, just to say that as we do that, I believe it's a big thing. We don't talk about how people get, quote, political, but in New Thought, you'll find that most people do go one particular way. And now we're seeing where, I'll just say this. I was in the INTA offices looking back through some old letters and correspondence. And I found one from a person who's long since been dead. So it's not someone who's alive now. A letter that concerned this person because they didn't like something that had happened. There was actually someone who announced their candidacy for president at an INTA Congress one year. Okay. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think they ran on the Green Party or something similar to that. Anyway, when I read this and this person's response to it, I realized that the person who wrote the letter, someone who would have been one of my heroes, great author, was very, very much my opposite in some of the things they thought in that letter. But as we become more diverse, we begin to accept that and accept that diversity, even when it's sometimes things that are very near to us, without compromising things that are true to us. And as we do that, I believe we will expand. But it's a new day of, I think, almost sometimes I think we use the term kinder and gentler, if you remember when that was a term one time.
Yep.
We begin to deliver our message in a kinder and gentler way. And anyway, but the social aspect within a church body, and we've changed center is now used more than church for most places. Some, I know people who are doing it totally. I have a friend who has a Center for Spiritual Living, and during the time of COVID, when it was totally locked down, their services were all online. And then when they started getting back together, it was hybrid in that people could watch online. And over a period of time, people just started coming one Sunday a month, and the rest of the month they would watch online.
Yep.
Their little friend circle would come in. So they have since that time now gone back to totally online for their Sundays, and they have one fellowship time each month where they all go to a nice restaurant and get like a banquet room there. They reserve a big room there, and they all go out and have fellowship, and they have that connection. So I believe we're going to learn to do more with means like that electronically, and then having our fellowship times together. I just think there's a lot of new things coming down the pike.
And that leads straight into the next question in terms of looking at how we begin to adopt new thought principles to more so-called modern issues, right, of technology and environmentalism and social justice. What are your thoughts on how we begin to apply these principles or make these principles more available to others so that we can begin to navigate some of these new paths or these new courses that are going to be very interesting to travel?
Well, again, it's something that we've I said something earlier. I said everything's by right of consciousness. Some people get to that point, they don't want to become too involved in any kind of social activism because they want to sit back and they want to just get it in consciousness. That's fine if that's them. But I believe we're coming to a time where more people are going to be active in expressing opinions of social issues. There are going to be more people. We had one particular march here in Nashville several years ago, and I went. It expressed my views, so I went. And it was the largest march of any kind like that we'd had ever in Nashville. I was amazed. I mean, I'm talking there were in excess of 15,000 people they thought were in that march that day. All of it, not one act of violence, by the way.
Wow.
But what I was amazed is when I started looking and they had set up a stage and a platform where people were doing some music and talking and giving speeches before you. And I looked, and there were the people that were part of my church who were on the stage leading this because they were speaking things that were dealt with that. So I believe we put our principles toward it. But I believe as well, there's an expression, and I know you're both familiar with it: treat and move your feet.
Yep.
If I want a sandwich and I have everything in the house to make that, or I'm a big seafood eater. If I want salmon tonight, I've got it in the freezer and I've got everything I need to figure it just the way I want to do it. And I can sit at the table and treat all I want to, and that is not going to fly out of the freezer and go fix itself for me. All right. I've got to take some action to accomplish my goal. So I believe we take our principles and we see that thing again about values. What do we value? And when we value others, we put ourselves with that empathy into their position. We recognize the oneness also means with our environment. If you're doing something that's hurting the environment, you're hurting me, you're hurting you, you're hurting each other. So it's a thing of that awareness. So it's really, when we apply our principles to it, we don't have to change them. They're already there, but we realize that oneness with everything and that empathy. And again, as we say, treat and move your feet. We're going to have to take and begin to take some action toward those things we believe in.
Yeah, and I love that because, I mean, we were talking before the show about some of the weather patterns that have been coming through your part of town and other areas over in that region, and to clean that up, to help people that are in need, somebody got to do something. You can't just sit there and pray. Somebody's got to get some shovels and some dump trucks and, get their hands involved. And I think that's a great metaphor for everything that we face in life, right? When it's a tragedy, we want to do that. But when it's celebration, we want to do that. We have to be holistic, I believe, in how we begin to apply these principles so that people can say, we live for the whole of life. We understand that there's celebration and there's sadness, and we embrace all of it and we work through all of it. And that's why it's a new thought. It's not one or the other. It's a new thought because we look at it all as one thing, life.
Yeah. I love that you bring up the piece of seeing your congregants, seeing people that are following you, that are listening to your wisdom, resharing that wisdom to a different audience and perhaps in a little bit of a different language. But it reminds me of the rather famous or infamous Mother Teresa quote, I won't go to an anti-war rally. When you have a peace rally, invite me. And so we get to be the living demonstration of how these principles work, not just an intellectual understanding of them, but when people see their spiritual leader at a march or out in the community, or taking a stand to say no to maybe somebody that's bullying or oppressing someone on a bus or a street corner or in a cafeteria or anywhere we might be, that becomes the living embodiment of this philosophy and this teaching. And I really think that's where, when the rubber hits the road, that's where people gain traction. That's where people really start to take notice and say, hey, I want some of what they got. Because they're not out there screaming hate, and they're not out there trying to counteract violence with more violence. They're, in the words of Ram Dass, when they throw arrows, we throw hearts. And sometimes those hearts may not look like, oh, I love you, you're amazing, and I want to hug and kiss and cuddle with you. Sometimes the hearts look like, this has to end, and I'm here to take a stand that we can move in a new direction, that we can have a new thought. Such a rich conversation, gentlemen. And before we run out of time, we do also want to make sure that we give Dr. Tim a chance to share a little bit about what's going on specifically in the future. I know the Congress is coming up, and we want to talk a little bit about that. And anything else you'd like to share with the audience today on how they can be getting involved with this mighty philosophy, and specifically with the New Thought Movement and International New Thought Alliance.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we do call for people who aren't familiar with it. Our annual meeting is called our Congress. So we have a World Congress once a year. This is our 108th World Congress. We've been around for 109 years, and we had 1 year during World War II that we could not have a Congress. So it's been every year. And last year, because we've in the past, there have been some magnificent speakers there. Last year, we did something that has never been done, to my knowledge, ever. It's definitely not been done anytime in recent years. And that is, we had the leader of every New Thought organization in the country there as a speaker or a presenter or to sit on a panel. We had the leadership of CSL. We had the leadership of Unity. We had Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. We had, who is the head of Agape and also started the Association for Global New Thought. We had New Thought Media Network was there, but also we had the Anton Association, Anton, ANTN, Affiliated New Thought Network.
Yes.
All right. We're also, like, sometimes we're the alphabet religion. Everything has its letters. Okay. But all of these different organizations were there. And INTA used to say, well, we're an umbrella organization. And some people didn't like that because umbrella was normally like someone who had almost a denominational structure. So I just want to say that we have a big tent, and we want everybody to take part in what's happening. And so we will, again, this year, we'll be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at Sunshine Cathedral. When we mentioned Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins earlier, we will be at his church. So for those of you who have never seen holy water available in a New Thought church, come on down and you get to see it firsthand. All right. And I guarantee you, it doesn't take from the message. It only adds to the diversity, and that makes everyone feel welcome. We will be there July the 17th through the 20th. That starts on a Monday evening. And then we'll go from Monday evening through till Thursday evening. Thursday evening, we have our banquet, but we will have someone representing each of the different New Thought organizations. Again, it may not be the top leadership this year, but we're wanting to begin a process where every year people who are part of the leadership have a say-so in who's coming, who represents them, that it's not me or just those of us who are on the board with the circle of people that we know, but we want a wider diversity of people there, and we want to have a larger selection from the New Thought world, the New Thought community. So again, I invite everybody to come down. Like I say, it's going to be warm, so expect it to be warm, but that's okay. Air conditioning works great inside Sunshine Cathedral. They have fabulous air conditioning. There'll be great music. There'll be some absolutely wonderful speakers. Yeah. And you're invited to be a part of that. We don't want you just to come and attend. We want you to come and be part of the family. We want you to come and be part of what's happening. Yeah. As I say, engage. And I look back at it when I went to my first INTA Congress. I looked and I saw people that I had heard of, but I'd never met. And I began to go and to get known. And today, I'm fairly well known in the New Thought community, or I think I am. Maybe that's just me thinking that, but most people know who I am. And a lot of opportunities opened up to me by being there. Yeah. All right. Because I fell in love with the concept of what INTA is. We had not the first one, but the second one I went to. I remember that one actually. Reverend Darrell Watkins was the Congress chair for that one. He's the Congress chair for this one. But Darrell and I later ended up both being ordained in divine science on the same day, side by side in the same ceremony. So we have some ties there. But Durrell was the Congress chair, and it was also the first one where I spoke.
Mm.
And what I saw that time is the wide diversity that was there. It was the first time that I ever met Dr. Barbara King, for those who may know who Reverend Dr. Barbara King was. And she was about close to 7 feet tall. I don't know her exact height, but she was this tall woman, and she was a black woman. And she came up to me, and she looked at me. And the first thing she says, "Come here and give me a hug. Give me some of that male energy." And she and I became instant friends. But yeah, she was amazing, absolutely amazing person. But
I want to echo some of what you're saying. We're about running out of time here, so we're going to need to wrap this up shortly. But I want to echo that last year was my first Congress, and being there with New Thought Media Network, it did feel like a historic event in that we're having the conversations of oneness with all of these various organizations and all the various leaders and people. And it makes the movement feel so much more expansive, so much larger, so much more, and at the same time, so much more intimate, to be able to be with the people that are shaping the culture, that are driving the vision, that are pulling the others along into a newer expression of New Thought. So we want to encourage you also, folks, to be there. I'm going to be there this year. Other members of our team are going to be there this year. And registration opens in just a week or so. Is that right? Registration isn't quite open yet, right?
That's right. It will open on April the 15th. So today's the 4th. You got 11 more days. You can go to newthoughtevents.org.
Yes.
newthoughtevents.org. And you'll find out how to register there. That will all be available there on the 15th.
I would love to give you a hug at that conference.
Yeah.
At the conference.
Hey, bring it in here. Bring it in, okay? Reverend T, you show up, bring it in too, okay?
Yes, yes.
And just to echo one thing, and that is, it is a place, and the point I was making when I was talking about being well known is my connections in the New Thought community all began and have built through going to INTA events. And it's a way to become connected with the community. And that, I think, is just amazing. So
absolutely. All right, folks. So the address there is running across the screen on the bottom of your screen, newthoughtevents.org. We're going to take a real quick break and say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors. But we'll be right back with more and our final thoughts here on New Thought Today. Don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you. And we're back here saying on New Thought Today. Before we do our final thoughts, I just want to say, Dr. Tim, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. I understand how busy of a man you are, and how much preparation goes into making sure that these congresses happen and they happen smoothly, and that that it's a great collection of people. So I really honor the work that you do to keep bringing New Thought into the future and keeping it relevant for those that are showing up. So thank you for that. I hope you'll be able to come back again sometime.
Thank you. I look forward to it. And, we'll make it a little bit of a mutual appreciation here, because what you do here with New Thought Media Network is absolutely amazing. It's something that's using a technology that so many times, we talked about it in New Thought for a long time. You're doing it. Yeah. Some people talk about it. You're a doer, and I appreciate that. Reverend Z, the same goes for you. I used to have a little bit more time on Friday mornings and would listen to you quite often. And now schedules changed a little bit, don't have as much time, but you're always a blessing. And I thank you for what you're doing.
Beautiful. All right.
Thank you for that.
We got 2.5 minutes, Z. Let's do a round of final thoughts. What's up? What's your final thought for the week?
Well, quick thought. It's honestly refreshing to have Dr. Tim here and talk about the ideas of the Congress and everything, because we need more unity now than ever before, and especially for those who believe in a God, or believe in a higher power or a spiritual aspect of life that unites us all. So my final thought is, let's find a way to find someone of a different spiritual tradition, and let's get to know them better. Let's begin to really build some strong bridges and hands across the aisle, if you will, so that we can make this world not only great for us, but for those to come after us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Dr. Tim.
Well, just as Reverend Z was talking, I want to pose a thought that I said several years ago, and that was that we talk so much about celebrating diversity. You said, "Give me a hug when you see me." Reverend Z, you're the same. Let us embrace that is diverse from us, that is different. Let us put our arms out and give that an embrace of love. And then let us celebrate together that unity that we share. So if we begin to embrace our diversity and celebrate our unity, and let that be the way we learn to live.
Amen. Thank you. Oh, I always put myself last in these circles, and it always makes it harder. Such wisdom today, folks. Gentlemen, thank you both. I think for me, the final thought today is now more than ever, everyone has to be involved. Thoughts and prayers alone are not enough. We have to be involved, and whether that's showing up at the Congress, or watching the rebroadcast of last year's, or just being involved with your local community, as both these great gentlemen said, in one way or another, get out and meet someone new and get involved and be that living demonstration of New Thought.
Yeah.
Folks, we want to thank you for being with us. We are right up against our time limit, so we're going to get out of here for now. Let Dr. Tim get back into his work, but we'll be back again next Tuesday as well, and we have a very special guest next week as well. Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller is going to be our guest on New Thought Today next Tuesday, so please like, share, and subscribe. Let your friends know what we're doing. Going to look forward to that conversation as well. And until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.